Hey everybody, it's Jason Blaha here, and today's going to be kind of a continuation of the video I did yesterday, and I'm going to cover it because I got quite a few comments in there, and I actually had to ban a few trolls who got belligerent with it and crazy. But yeah, I discussed a concept yesterday called train the muscle, not the joint. So let me put on my +5 hat of weaponsmithing, do a little bit of crafting, and let's talk about it. All right, one of the interesting points I noted in there. A lot of people came in defending this concept, defending the person. Like I said in the video, guys, I'm not familiar with this person. I'm not familiar with all of his work. All I'm noting is that this concept of training the muscle, not the joint, anyone even saying that is absurd. And I don't really have time to dig into every concept that another person has. But that concept itself is absurd. Doing partial reps to avoid training the joint or working the joint is counterproductive. It's potentially destructive, can hurt you in the long term. And a few people came in talking about doing various isolation movements. It's beneficial to do partials on isolation movements. And that's really kind of a scary thing. It's a ridiculous thing. Not to mention the fact that people came in talking about, well, Ronnie Coleman and whatever. And it's like, look, guys, I wouldn't use Ronnie Coleman as an example. First of all, Ronnie Coleman was an insane genetic freak. The guy had admitted even before he ever did steroids that he was deadlifted over 700 pounds. Think about that for a minute. Over 700 pounds. And the guy suffered numerous injuries and was in a wheelchair not that long ago. I'm not sure if he's recovered from that. So put that in perspective. I wouldn't exactly use this person's training methods. Again, people in fitness and health and people who want to be more athletic and fit shouldn't be looking at what pro bodybuilders do. It's completely irrelevant to most of you. Anyone who wants quality of life. Don't worry about what pro bodybuilders do. Let pro bodybuilders do what pro bodybuilders do and continue to compete in their endeavor. For most of you, what they do is not going to be that helpful. They aren't the healthiest or most fit individuals in the world. So again, I wouldn't spend a lot of time obsessing over what they do. Now, when it came to isolation movements, what I thought was really bizarre is that a couple people came in talking about different isolation movements for their arms or whatever, saying, well, if I do full range of motion, it hurts. So he's right. So I assume it was some of his followers were saying that, you know, if I do behind the head tricep extensions with a dumbbell or preacher curls or incline curls, I skip some of the range of motion. You know, it's not going to hurt the joint and it's painful to do those. Now, stop and think about that for a minute. Stop and think about that for a minute. Doing the bottom of a behind the head tricep extension, yeah, the stretch position, the entire reason you do the exercise. All right, there's no point in doing a behind the head dumbbell extension for your triceps other than to try to get a stretch reflex. That's what makes the movement actually useful. That's what makes the movement useful, because I would tell you honestly, outside of that, do you really think that exercise is going to work the tricep better than a closed grip bench press or a weighted dip? Think about that for a minute. All right, think about that for a minute. What's going to put more size on your tricep? Cranking out 8 to 10 reps on a closed grip bench press with 225, or using a little 30 or 40 pound dumbbell behind your neck, behind your head for extensions, particularly doing partials. How about doing weighted dips with your body weight plus 50 pounds? How about cranking out reps of that? You think that's not going to be better for your tricep than that exercise? The only reason people do an exercise like that is to get the stretch reflex. And how about some of these curls that people are doing? The whole point of a preacher curl is that it works the bicep. It pulls on it, gives you a little bit of a stretch at the bottom. So why would you skip the bottom of the exercise? The exercise exists so that you can do the bottom. That's where it does most of the work. It's hardest. That's why the exercise was invented. Same thing on an incline curl. The bottom is where you get a stretch reflex. There's no point to doing an incline curl other than the stretch reflex. That's the benefit to doing it. You only get that when you go to the bottom and come back up. So think about that for a minute. And now, before people say, well, what about you? You don't have amazing arms. No, I don't have good arm genetics, and I don't do those exercises either. So that's not about me. So people need to stop with the ad hominems like that. It's completely irrelevant to the point of the reason those exercises exist. It doesn't matter whether it's me telling you that, Ronnie Coleman telling you that, or Bill Gates telling you that. Those are the reason those exercises were invented. That's why coaches have people do them, to work those stretch positions or bottom position movements. And when you think about it, why do you isolate a muscle? Why does anybody ever isolate a muscle? Do they honestly think you get bigger, a muscle gets bigger by isolating it compared to bigger movements? You really think a preacher curl will make your bicep bigger than doing dead hang weighted chin-ups? You really think a tricep extension is going to make your tricep, the overall tricep, bigger than doing a weighted dip? I don't think so. I hope nobody thinks that. The purpose of isolation movements is to work the muscle from a different, bodybuilders use the term angle, but really what it is a performance component. Meaning you are activating the muscle sometimes with a different tension curve than you would get off of a big compound. Sometimes when you have a lagging muscle that's lagging behind others, doing some extra work through kind of a position that muscle isn't normally being worked through on your other exercises can help bring it up a little bit. It can help stimulate some additional growth, some additional strength that you don't normally have in that muscle. That's why they're used to kind of bring up weak points. That is why people do them. That's the whole concept of an isolation movement. Isolation movements do not automatically give you more growth than a compound. In fact, it's usually the opposite. So if you're going to do these isolation movements, what's the point of doing them for a partial? These exercises were invented to work certain functions of the muscle that don't get worked any other way. A behind the head tricep extension, you're getting a stretch reflex at the bottom. Someone's like, well, the stretch reflex hurts. Well, yeah, it hurts, but it's not damaging your tendon. That exercise shouldn't be hurting your tendon or elbows. What's happening is that you've hurt your tendons or elbows doing other exercises incorrectly, like maybe doing skull crushers or rope press downs to where you keep the elbow down at the side and do this. Sure, it works the muscle, but it also damages the connective tissue, builds up scar tissue on there, makes it get inflamed. So most people who are having pain like that, when they do a stretch position movement, it's not the stretch position that's causing the problem. It's the stretch position making you feel the other injuries that you have from the other dumb shit you're doing. Think about that for a minute. It's not that movement is doing it, it's because it's putting a stretch on the tendons and muscles that you've already inflamed or caused scar tissue or calcification to happen from long-term inflammation from doing really dumb exercises. And then you feel it when you do that because the muscle's finally being stretched for the first time. Therefore, you feel the injuries and inflammation that you've caused already doing other stuff. Those exercises are perfectly safe. That behind the head extension like that doesn't damage tendons. I've never seen any data or anyone suggest that would cause damage to the tendons around the elbows. But there are other tricep exercises that do. So same thing with these other movements. An incline curl is an injury prevention movement. And by doing the bottom of the range of motion, it actually makes your joints and connective tissue stronger at the bottom. You know what that means? That means a lower risk of injuring yourself doing something like a deadlift. All right, that's a good way to actually reduce your chances of getting injured doing a big movement like the deadlift. That actually is an exercise that's invented to be safer for you. So why would anybody do a partial? Why would anybody do partials on these movements? It doesn't make a lot of sense. When you step back and think about it, these partials that people are doing, it's an ego thing. It is about people stepping back, and because they're trying to put a lot of focus on isolation movements because maybe they think that's the key to getting bigger, it's that male ego that we have that says, well, I want to lift more weight. Well, you can't lift a lot of weight doing full range of motion on little small isolation movements unless you cheat somehow. All right, unless you cheat. Well, one of the ways you can cheat is to not do the full range of motion. Sure, it doesn't work the muscle as well. Sure, you're skipping some benefits, but it allows you to lift a heavier weight. So maybe, someone on the behind the head extension or the incline curl, maybe they can only do full range of motion with 25-pound dumbbells for 10 reps. But man, if they go to a partial, they can use 40s. They might even be able to use 45s if they cut another 3 inches out of the bottom of the range of motion. They cut the hardest part of the exercise out, the part that actually activates a stretch reflex, a myotatic reflex, which is known to recruit more muscle fibers. In fact, myotatic reflexes have been shown in some studies to cause more muscle activation even at the top, because the stretch reflex moves the weight up faster, causes a more intense contraction and more muscle fiber recruitment that sometimes carries all the way over to the peak contraction at the top of the exercise. It will continue to fire extra muscle fibers sometimes as a result of that. So it's kind of an interesting response the body has. And myostatic reflexes are a great way to get some extra development in the lagging muscle because of that, because it kind of tricks the nervous system a little bit with that stretch. It makes it fire a little harder through the peripheral nervous system, pick up a few extra motor units, which activate muscle fibers. It's kind of short-circuiting the nervous system there a little bit and kind of making it cheat to work harder. But people skip these things because their ego and they just want to lift more weight. And then they say, well, no, I do the partial because it's a lower injury chance. As if doing full range of motion hurts you. No, full range of motion on most exercises makes your joints stronger. It actually improves mobility and improves joint health. And I'm not saying partials can't do that, but it's not the same. Full range of motion will give you healthier joints than doing partials the vast majority of the time. So that's what's really going on here. And people love to hear someone give them an answer, a good reason, a supposedly scientific reason why they should cheat and use heavier weight on isolation movements instead of doing them correctly. All right, guys, but that's really all I have to say on that today. I hope it's been informative, and I will talk to you guys next time.